When you're suffering after the loss of a loved one or the breakup of a relationship, rely on meditation for grief and loss. There are some excellent meditations for grief. Meditation can help you to control your emotions, and it can also help you to handle painful memories from the past. In fact, meditation is one of the most effective ways to soothe the physical and emotional pain associated with grief. Grief is a strong emotion. When we experience loss and bereavement, it is natural to feel grief and loss. And most of us have experienced those wrenching symptoms of a tense heart, numbness of the spirit, and of course, so many tears. Sorrow and grief are natural after loss. But for some, moving forward is impossible. 2 to 3% of the population is affected by what is called complicated grief, a clinical disorder for people with prolonged grief, and 10 to 20% of the time this is after the death of a spouse or lover, and especially when the loss is sudden or violent. 1. Complicated grief requires therapy and counseling. But there is good news: you can overcome grief with meditation. And you can use mindfulness and meditation to create inner peace for yourself. As Joan Halifax says in Being with Dying, Amazon, a spiritual practice can give us refuge, a shelter in which to develop insight about what is happening both outside us and within our minds. Grief is the price we pay for love. Queen Elizabeth II. Why you should use meditation for grief and loss. In my experience, the two best ways to handle grief and loss is with meditation and with yoga. If you want to overcome grief with meditation, you first have to ask yourself what the nature of your grief is. What is it that causes suffering? Buddha taught that the root of all suffering, including grief, is attachment. This is one of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Attachment is when you hold on to something in your mind. When you use meditation for grief and loss, you let go of that attachment. For instance, imagine that you have lost your father, something I personally went through a couple of years ago. Now the reality, of course, is sadly that your father has passed away. But because you love your father so very much, you are not simply able to let him go. Your mind holds on to the image of your father as a healthy man. This is called attachment. Your mind is attached to the idea of your father as a healthy man. Now imagine that there are two forces. One force is reality. The other force is your idea of reality. For instance, your idea of your father being alive. These two forces are working in opposition, because the reality is that the person has passed, but your mind is attached to the idea of them being alive. When any two forces work in opposition, there is a strain. And the strain is the pain in your mind, your feeling of grief and loss. The only way to stop the pain of grief and loss is to let go. When we use meditation techniques for grief, we teach the mind to let go. How I used meditation to overcome the death of my father. My father's passing was a very difficult time in my life. In this article, one will share 5 meditations for letting go that helped me at that time. There have been many times in my life when I have chosen to use meditation for letting go. The most recent time when I really needed to let go was following my father's death last year. My father's death was a shock and was the end of a somewhat turbulent relationship. My father had always been two things. 1, a loving family man. And 2, an alcoholic. Those two completely opposite aspects of his personality led to a war in my mind. When he died, I was sad, angry, despondent, exhausted. I experienced so many thoughts, from, it's my fault, though Lord knows how that could ever be the case, to, he's abandoned me, to, I miss him and I love him. There were so many thoughts, my mind sunk like a ship in stormy tides, and I plummeted to the depths. Thank you. I am fortunate to have a loving family, and they helped pick me up. But there was one thing I needed to do for myself. I needed to release my suffering. I needed to let go of painful memories and move on. And I need to find inner peace. Meditation helps me to let go and move on so I could look back happily, and no longer in the midst of grief and sorrow. When it hurts, use meditation to let go. If you've experienced the passing of a beloved family member, you'll understand the need to let go, the need to move on. Though it hurts to move on, the truth is that that is precisely what they would want. And that is what we should want for ourselves. We should want to move on. The same is true for broken relationships. We need to let go. If the sun has set on a once blossoming relationship, if that relationship is now in shadow, then it is time to move on in the light of day, time to let go, time to face the next chapter of life. At times like that you need to let go, perhaps to forgive and move on. Buddhism teaches us that life is impermanent and we cannot cling on. Wherever we look in life there is this process. There is finding, experiencing, and then letting go. We find a new job. We enjoy the job. But inevitably the time will come when we move on from that job. And so with love, we find love, we experience love, but the time comes when we must let go. And for our kids too. We have children. We nurture them. But the time comes when they must be let go. The moments of life come like breath. We inhale. We let that moment, that breath, fill our being. But then we must let go. Only by letting go of one breath can we experience the next. To hold on to one breath is to suffocate, because the body needs fresh oxygen. And so too do the mind and spirit. We need to breathe in. We need to experience. We need to let go. That is the three-pronged wheel of life. But at times, we get caught on one of those prongs. Sometimes we are caught on finding new things. We go from one job to the next, or from one person to the next, constantly wanting to experience more and more and more. At other times, we are stuck in one experience. Perhaps we're tapped in a relationship that is no longer healthy and positive. Perhaps we're no longer enjoying our jobs but we feel trapped in them, as though there's no way we could possibly leave. And finally, at times we hold on to something that has already passed. I held on to my father. I found it very difficult to let him go. But I know I must. Emotions are as quicksand. There comes a time when you know you need to get out, but the more you fight the more trapped you become. Soon you will be stuck in a rut. You can't fight to let go, because when you make yourself fight something you are giving that something control over yourself. Trying to let go of emotional pain by fighting is akin to trying to get rid of a scab by scratching at it. You're only going to make matter worse. You cannot fight to let go. You cannot let go by gripping tighter. You must loosen your grip. You must accept reality. This acceptance is one of the main points of Buddhism. We must stop fighting. We must accept. To accept, we have to let go. Meditation helps. Past experiences haunt our existence like a smear on the retina of the conscious mind. We focus on the past experience, on what has been lost, and prevent ourselves from seeing the present moment. This is only going to lead to more harm. We need instead to focus on the present moment. This will clean the consciousness of its smear and allow us to live free from the ghosts of past experience. The only way to let go of the past is to focus on the now. That's where meditation comes in. By focusing the mind on the present moment, meditation helps us let go of the past. There are many fabulous meditations for letting go, all of which will help you to move on. Following at 5 of the best. 3 Best meditations for letting go. 1. Breathe in new oxygen gently first, and maybe the best of all meditation for letting go is a breathing meditation. The oxygen in your mind has become old and stale. It's time to breathe in some fresh air. Literally. The best type of meditation for letting go is to meditate on your breath. If you would like to know how to do this, read my guide to Anapanasati meditation. This is probably the best meditation for letting go because it calms the mind and helps you to release things. 2. Candle meditation for letting go. Another of the best meditations for letting go is a candle meditation. Candle meditations are a powerful way of focusing the mind. And because of the symbolism of the candle itself, they also help us to move on. One very powerful way to use a candle meditation for letting go is to get a candle which is almost outer wax. Here's how. Get a candle that is almost out of wax. Make sure there's enough wax to last for around 20 minutes. Now go to a dark room and tell yourself that you will spend the next 20 minutes meditating on the candle, and that when the candle dies you will be set free from the past. Focus your gaze on the candle. Repeat the mantra, "With the flame I release you," referring to the thing you are holding on to. Meditate on the candle until it is out. Say, "It is done." Visualize letting go and moving on. Express gratitude for this meditation. Try 20 minutes of this meditation to let go of baggage. Point 3. Taoist meditations for letting go. Taoist methods are some of the best meditation techniques for letting go of anger, resentment and other negative emotions. These are some of the best meditations for letting go. Often, at times of moving on, there is some pent-up anger or resentment. When my father died, part of me was angry at him. But that anger doesn't help. My father deserves to be remembered in loving memory, and I deserve peace. And it is the same for you. Taoist meditation helps to remove any negative feelings and to create complete acceptance and love. This allows you to move on in the right way. I've written a free guide to Taoist meditations. I hope you find it useful. It is a challenge to move on. The past has a way of haunting the mind, like shadows. But when consciousness focuses on the present moment, the light of day shatters the darkness and allows you to rise once more. I hope these 5 meditations for letting go help you as they helped me. One of the best type of meditation technique for grief is a mindful ritual. Mindful rituals help with a grief because they help you to let go. For instance, a funeral, celebration of life, or a private moment. These rituals help us to let go and move on, and science proves they work. Science shows that rituals help with a grief. Rituals like funerals and celebrations of life help to relieve grief. Science proves it. Research published by the Journal of Experimental Psychology studied the psychological effects of rituals. The researchers looked at religious rituals and informal rituals and observed how these rituals help with bereavement. The researchers asked 76 university students to write about a time of loss and how they coped. The losses were all either death or the breakup of a relationship. They were also asked to describe the rituals they performed and how they handled their loss. Most of these rituals were private. Only 10% were public and 5% religious. The rituals including things like playing the favorite song of someone we have lost, and writing letters expressing how they felt. In a continuation of this study, researchers looked at how these rituals affected 247 participants, and half the group were asked to write about how they felt. The results show that rituals help us to feel more control after bereavement. Rituals help us to deal with feelings of loss. Even novel rituals help us deal with a grief. It doesn't make a difference what kind of ritual you perform. Writing about the rituals afterwards helps us to feel more control over our loss. That's why a mindful ritual is the best meditation technique for grief and sorrow. What Buddha said about using meditation for grief. Ubiri was one of the first women Buddhists. She had lost her daughter and was stricken with sorrow. Her daughter, Jiva, was the daughter of the king, but she died soon after birth. Ubiri mourned the loss of her daughter every day at the funeral ground. One day the funeral ground was of people. The Buddha was traveling through the region and was teaching the people. Ubiri listened to the Buddha but was again overcome with grief and loss. She ran to the riverside and wept. Buddha heard Ubiri's crying. He longed to help her. Ubiri told Buddha of her loss. The Buddha pointed to the funeral grounds and said, "Mother, you cry out, O Jiva, in the woods. Come to yourself, Ubiri." 84,000 daughters, all with the name Jiva, had burned in the funeral fire. For which one do you grieve? With these words, Buddha reminded Ubiri that she was not alone, that we have all experienced grief and loss. We are together in this pain. Grief and loss touche us all. It makes us feel alone. But in the pain of grief and loss we are more together than ever. Take solace in the wisdom that in grief, we are one. Let go by using meditation for grief and loss. The key to overcoming grief is letting go. But boy, is it hard sometimes. It's hard because of the inner struggle. That's why it's a good idea to use meditation for grief. Have you ever felt that you are experiencing inner struggle about your loss? When you are trying to overcome grief and loss, you may feel as though one part of you is pulling one way, the other way. When my father died, I remember desperately wanting to say the things I never got to say. My father's death was an accident and sudden, so there was no time to say what I needed to say. Times like these we are torn in two. Part of me wanted to accept my father's death so that I could move on and look back on him with love and happiness. But part of me just couldn't let it go. So I was torn. Buddhism teaches that life is impermanence. Watch How to Stop Time. When we accept impermanence, we relieve sorrow and loss. When we fail to accept impermanence, when we cling, we create a rift in the mind. This rift in the mind is where the grief comes in. You have pain because part of you is fighting to overcome grief and loss, fighting to accept reality and let go, and the other part of you is fighting to hold on and never let go. So your mind is at war with itself, one part attacking the other. This makes it impossible to overcome sorrow after the death of a loved one. One of the reasons highly emotional people are unable to control their emotions is because they cannot stop this fight in the mind, the fight in which one part of them is pulling one way and the other part pulling the other way. When you use meditation for grief and loss, you balance your emotions. This returns you to your natural, calm state. If you want to have inner peace, you need to stop the war that is going on in your own mind. To do that, we let go. And to let go, we meditate. So how do you use meditation for grief and loss? When using meditation for grief and loss, the aim is to let go. We need to end the inner struggle. We need to stop holding on so tightly. We need to release our loved ones back into the universe. Imagine that your grief is not something in your own mind. Imagine that it is a physical thing. Imagine it as a weight that you need to let go before you injure yourself. Notice how this analogy works perfectly. You are carrying a heavy weight, your emotional burden, and you do need to let go before it harms you. To let go of the weight, you literally let go. What happens to the weight after that is up to the world. The world will take the weight, and of course gravity will drop the weight to the ground where it will come to rest. And the exact same thing needs to happen with your mind. Let go of grief by dropping those thoughts in your mind. Stop clinging. Remove the attachment. Let go. Release the person or the relationship into the universe. Use this meditation for grief introduction. You may have never meditated before, in which case, read our Beginner's Guide to Meditation. I'll explain meditation very briefly. Meditation is focusing your mind on reality, and normally on one specific part of reality. When you meditate, you focus your mind on reality. You let go and let the world take over. And you do that by focusing on the present moment. You might focus on your breathing, on the sounds around you, on a movement, for instance yoga and tai chi, or anything. What matters is that you are focusing your mind on the present moment. When you focus your mind on the present moment in this way, you let go and let the world take over. And just as when you drop the weight, the world takes over, drops the weight to the ground and lets it rest there, the exact same thing will happen when you meditate. You will give your mind over to the world. The world will drop those thoughts, which are your grief, and you will be free. And do not worry when your eye get wet. If that happens, just read my explanation of why you cry when you meditate. Meditation for grief instructions. This meditation for grief and loss will help you to let go in a positive way. While honoring the person or relationship that we are releasing, you will need a personal object from the individual who has been lost. It must be an object you are willing to let go of. Literally, if there is negative energy surrounding the loss, read my guide to overcoming bad memories before you do this meditation. Sit in the garden, or, if indoors, sit somewhere quiet and peaceful, with a personal object from the person or from the relationship. The absolute perfect spot for this is by a body of water or stream, river. Close your eyes and focus on your breath for 15 breaths. Bring the person to mind. If you are doing this for a breakup or divorce, bring to mind the two of you together. See the person, or the relationship, in a happy moment. Meditate on this happy moment for 15 breaths. Imagine saying anything you need to say to them. I love you, thank you, and yes, I am sorry for. Take 25 breaths to do this. Imagine hearing them saying what you need to hear. I forgive you. I am still with you. Take 25 breaths to do this. Feel them with you as you take another 10 breaths. Say that it is time to move on, but that you are moving on with love and gratitude. Let go of the personal object. If you are by water, release it into the water. Express gratitude for this meditation. Congratulations! You have moved forward with love and respect, and you will forevermore look back with happiness. Greater than. Here is everything you need for spiritual healing. Guided meditation for grief. How I used art-based meditation for grief as a mindfulness teacher. My go-to for grief is meditation, always. But art therapy has helped me move on too. It's been a few months since my father passed away. Anyone who has experienced the death of a parent knows well how harrowing it is. It feels as though your spirit has been severed in two. When my father died, at first I didn't believe it. His death was an accident and a shock. I denied it. Then it gradually dawned on me, over the course of a phone call with my mother, that he really was gone and would never be coming back. That was when the grief and loss began to set in. I felt so alone in the world, like a ship without anchor lost in a bizarre world. I drifted through the pain. At times it came pouring out of me and I wept. Grief seeped through my body, mind, and spirit like water through crevices. Today, the wound is still open and at times I will weep. What I really need, for myself and for my family, is to be able to truly let go of those emotions. I need to allow my father to be in heaven. Grieving is not easy. As a meditation teacher, I've had many people say to me, well, surely you know how to cope with this sort of thing. I suppose that's true, to an extent. I do know a great deal about how to cope with grief. Meditation has helped me immensely.